Welcome to the Apex Insider Fantasy Show. Yes, you heard that correctly. No longer F1 Money Gang. We've officially launched our rebrand. We are now officially Apex Insiders. If you tuned into the betting preview show, we talked about the changes and what that means. Really, at the end of the day, it just means we have a more professional name, I guess you could say, as we've been growing our content. Again, we started as just a group of guys that loved F1. We loved doing F1 betting and fantasy and everything, and it turned up to be that we had a lot of followers, and here we are. So I got my man Garrett with me. He's our specialty when it comes to fantasy, DFS, really on all apps, but mostly we really play along in Grid Rivals. So want to really appreciate our Grid Rival partners. They've been fantastic to us and really do love their app, especially the Pick'ems. That's where I play mostly. And yeah, Garrett, what's going on, man?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just happy that F1 is back, and I'm glad to be a part of the whole rebrand. And just I know I've said this several times, but just thanks for giving me the opportunity to just have this platform where I can uh, share whatever my two cents are on both Discord and excuse me, and on the podcast as well. I really appreciate it, and glad to be doing it again.
Yeah, man. I know we haven't been doing it as much with fantasy side. It's been quite hectic this year. I know we've done a few podcasts, at least myself with you. I know you've done some with Dolcetto as well. So, but yeah, no, it's exciting. I think that going into, I know we're really at the tail end or the halfway point, past the halfway point. I know tail end for
the the,
IndyCar.
the two-thirds point or whatever.
Whatever we are, I feel like we should almost be done. But the calendar, I keep forgetting we have like a lot of races still. But yeah, no, round
Mhm.
15. So we're getting there. But yeah, we're just setting up really for next year. So I always have to think ahead. So that's why yeah, I'm pretty pumped. But that's neither here nor there. I think we're gonna talk about fantasy. And before we get started, it's been a while since I loaded the fantasy aspect of Grid Rival, and I do want to say I've made some mistakes in the last three rounds that has kind of bit me, and that's why. So remember, at one point I was like in the what top 7 or 8 or something like that, and since
Yeah, you were up
then
there.
I've dropped to 15th. It's not been it's
Oof.
been shaky. I've had
Can I take a guess?
yeah, uh
I bet you had some Alpine involved.
no, actually
Really?
it's surprisingly well, this last one had Russell. So he had the
Oh, yeah.
DNF that or DQ, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Um the time before, I can't remember which race, I ran into a little issue, which this is the part of Grid Rival that can sting you as you're listening to this, which is I had misalignment with how I signed some of my back marker guys with the guys I was like front loading. I would do five race contracts with like a Hamilton or a Piastri, and I front loaded there once I was going through my cycle, and I didn't realize that the next race I needed to continue to have like a Logan Sargent, like $4 million salary, and I put myself in this position where he was locked. There was no one else that I could grab at that such low salary, and I was like, crap. So I have to do an early release for someone, or I leave a spot open. So I took the chance and released a spot. And what is that, like 500K that you just lose right off the bat?
It's 3% of the
So
driver's value.
it was a lot.
So it fluctuates based on the contract, but yeah, it can be quite a chunk of change.
It was a lot, and I didn't want to go. I thought about like, hey, just keep the spot open, but I really wanted to maximize points because I was up there in the top 7 or 8. that ended up backfiring on me. So what I like to say is I did a McLaren strategy and totally fucked myself. So that's why I'm now in 15th, but it doesn't mean it's over. So just these are the little things you have to pay attention to in fantasy F1 on Grid Rival, especially. It's just making sure you look ahead at, like, if you're going to sign or front load your drivers, make sure the contracts are the signings are aligned, because I made that mistake and it's put me in this conundrum for 3 or 4 races. So I think I'm okay now, but yeah, and it didn't help that I had like Russell DNF and then I don't know, some other issues with the other races. I feel like I've had a driver every week with a DNF of some sort. It's just been that way. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, like I had, Alpine was doing great for those, well, like 3 races,
yeah,
and then I thought, "Okay, I've been avoiding them all season. I'm gonna take the jump now, take the leap, and I'm gonna put Gasly in my lineup." And I signed him for, like, I think 3 races, which happens to be his, like, DNF, DNS, and then the last one where I think he finished, but, like, got 104 points or whatever. So that was great. That was a great experience. Um, if you want to know how bad that 3 race stretch was, he scored a combined 174 fantasy points in those last 3 races. Hamilton scored 183 points in Spa alone.
yeah, yeah.
It was horrible, but
I
like
I had
you can
Hamilton.
still come back from that. Yeah.
That's what was so disappointing is I had Hamilton and Russell in Belgium. If that DNF did not happen, that would have been significant points for me, because I set myself up pretty nice with that. The only dud in my lineup would have been Joe, but that was my cheap driver I was trying to do for that week. But I had Ricardo, Albon, Russell, and Hamilton. I would have had pretty nice points doing that. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, pretty disappointed, man. Sucks. It's all right, but there's still, what do we have? Like 9 races left, I think.
9 or 10 somewhere in there.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's
like
9. So we still have a long way to go. We still got some time. So,
yeah,
um,
that's the important thing to remember is like, yeah, 2/3 of the season is behind you, but at the same time, like that's still a
still a
third of
lot.
the season in front of you, and it's a decent amount that of time that you can actually make up for losses. I mean, I've had the whole Alpine experience. I had a lineup where I had both Haas drivers in Monaco. And then like that team has since then, I've rebounded on that one particular team. If I'm remembering it correctly, I want to say I'm actually first. I've jumped up to first in that league. So like you can still come back from a very upsetting run, but you just got to put in the work, and I don't. Luck always helps. Not going to deny that, but knowing how to set up contracts, how to
Yeah.
look for value is absolutely crucial if you're looking for like a late season run, as they say in football.
Yeah, this one
American
right now
football.
you're in third, and in first place is F1 Gridiron, who we know pretty well for a while. He's at 12,800 points. And just in the top 10, I mean, that's like 500 points to separating. It's still a significant amount if you really think about it, because you would still have to, like, I guess with 9 races left, you'd have to make up at least, 50 to 70 points above him, which is kind of a tall ask, but it's not impossible at the end of the day. So, um, yeah, I'm always going to look back at that stretch where I made that mistake. That was going to be my crutch, and yeah, I had all these unlucky DNFs, but that's part of the game. You're going to have that. You just got to accept that's going to happen to anyone and everyone in the league. So, but anyways, let's get into this week's fantasy plays, because I I think I'm actually set. But what are some of I guess we're not going to do fades first. We're going to do which way you want to go? Do you want to go fades or
You
do
know,
you want
values.
to go values? Okay, let's go
Yeah,
values.
we can start off with the fun stuff.
Let's go with the values. What
Um,
value plays you got this week?
so out of all people, I'm actually the first person I have on my list is Max Verstappen, which is kind of funny because you're thinking like, okay, he's 29.1 million. He's the most expensive driver in Grid Rival, and like, how could he be a value? Well, he's the second cheapest he's been all year. I think he went down to 29
Mm-hmm.
once.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yes, it's not say quite the same effect as some of the other guys that I'll be getting to on my list, but at the same time, like he's cheaper than he has been, and Red Bull isn't quite what they were, but we know that Max is still a top tier driver, and at this point, he may be the best driver on the grid. When all things considered, as far as where every driver is at this point in their careers. Um, so yeah, he's more than capable. He's almost the cheapest he's ever been. He's more of a like I like his value. I don't think it's going to go up a ton, but I think that he's a solid play if you were to. Uh, I saw something on the Grid Rifle Discord. I think Singapore is coming up
Yeah,
in
that's
5 races,
yep.
which is
It's
historically not a great track for him. So if you wanted to do, say, a 4 race contract and then forget about Singapore, then that'd be completely fine. Like I'm all for the strategy of just lock in your drivers, your top tier drivers for a longer contract. And yes, their value may not fluctuate as much as some of the lower tier guys, but they're not supposed to. They're just supposed to be there to score points. If they happen to go up in value, then great.
mm-hmm.
Um, Go ahead.
It's in three.
I didn't know if you
Actually,
had.
it's technically in 3 races. So yeah, you would have to
Oh,
do
it's
it.
in three. Okay.
Yeah, because we have Dutch, then we have Monza next week. There's a little, I think, a week break, and then we have Baku and then Singapore. So we're back to the street
Okay.
courses after that.
So yeah, so okay, in that case, because I thought it was further out, but in that case, yeah, you could definitely do a 3 race, or uh, go 5. Because if he
Hmm.
does happen to lose some value in Singapore, the hope is, don't leave on a low note kind of thing. Like let him have an extra race to bounce back in Baku
Yeah.
and get his value back up. So yeah, 3 race contract or 5 race contract, I think is the best way to go. I wouldn't necessarily want to say end on a potential low note in Singapore. Not to say that he can't succeed there.
Mm.
It's just not a track that he's necessarily had a whole
It
lot of
almost
luck with.
you. I think you're onto something there. I think it does make sense if you do want to avoid that. You do 3. You get the next 3. You get the lockout in Singapore, and then you go right into Coda, Mexico. You're at the stretch. You're at the tail end of everything else. So it might make
And yeah,
sense to do that. Yeah.
if you do the 3, you get the lockout, and then I think if I'm doing my math correctly, there's only 5 races left after that. So then you could lock him in for another 5 race contract and just carry him on to the end of the year if you're wanting to do that kind of thing.
There's
So you just kind of
6.
lock in those points. There are
There's
6. Okay.
so we have Dutch, Monza, yeah, Baku, then Singapore, and then yeah, you have 6. Actually, I forgot yeah, they mixed it up. I forgot about this. So Qatar is actually after Vegas, and then it's Abu Dhabi to
Interesting.
close us out. I wish
Okay.
they would just get rid of the Qatar one. I mean, why did we put? There's too many damn races. I won't go on a tangent on this, but let's yeah. So there's 6.
There are.
Uh, yeah, I think that that's a solid play. I wonder. I wonder if you should maybe just go. Oh God, I don't know. I don't want to think too much ahead. Okay, so and from the technical side, like throwing aside fantasy plays and all that, the one thing that still worries me is what is Red Bull's car like? If we're saying they're going to be bad in Singapore, uh, do we really expect it to be good in certain locations like a Baku? Like it should be fine, but they've been struggling this year in certain aspects of the development of the car. Is why I'm starting to become a little weary of certain tracks that they're going to. Even this weekend, I kind of worry about Red Bull's performance in certain areas of this track. Even though it will be fine for them, it should suit them fine, But like an example is the curbs that were always like a problem in the beginning of the year just because of how the car was set up. It's just out of control at points, and you can see the discrepancy in the finishes between like Max is just hanging on by a thread just to even sometimes get to podium, and Perez is just God knows where. He's not even sometimes in the top 10. So I'm starting to get a
He's
little
hanging
weary.
out. He's somewhere.
He's somewhere,
We don't know where he is, but he's somewhere.
this is good for you to watch and have fun and enjoy as a viewer. But it really is it's a real thing that there is something there with Red Bull. People are overreacting and freaking out, but this just happens in F1. Like it's just a development, just not it doesn't work. And sometimes they have to take a step back, and maybe they're going to take that step back and find it in this last stretch of the season. But it's something just to think about, like pay attention to. Here's what I would say: pay attention to Free Practice Friday, or both sessions. It should give you a little tell on like, are they going to be fine or not? If he's just continuously topping 1, 2, and 3 every time, then yeah, he's going to be fine. Like just pay attention, like watch how he's driving, listen to what they're saying, listen to what the engineers are saying, because you still have time to change your lineup by the time it gets to Saturday morning. So, okay. So that's Max. Who else?
All right. So I'm going to go with George Russell, actually. He's all the way down at 22.2 million.
Yeah, it's such value, man.
And he does not deserve to be there. Like,
no. He lost 2 million on the
yeah,
last race.
he
Just 2 million just
exactly.
off DQ, and that pisses me off so much. But yeah.
So, yeah, like if it wasn't for the disqualification, he would have 2 wins in the last 4 races, and he also had pole in Britain, where I think he DNF'd.
Yeah.
Because he was like 19th, I think, in that race. So either like he's still doing very well. Yes, his one win he inherited, but he still put himself in that position.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for that Norris and Max crash, then a podium is still nothing to laugh at.
Yeah.
You got that. You had his unfortunate disqualification in Spa, but yeah, that's 2 potential wins that could have happened. One that did happen, one that didn't, and a pole that could have been different had it not been for a DNF, or finished different had it not been for the DNF. And then there was the whole, what was it? They didn't go out or they went out on a lap too early. Why am I blanking out on? Hang on, I'm trying to remember the race. It was Hungary, where like he qualified 17th or something because they put in a flying lap too early.
Yeah.
He still made up spots by finishing 8th. So, it wasn't necessarily the greatest recovery drive we've ever seen, but at the same time, it's still not bad, especially with the field tightening up the way that they have been here recently. So yeah, I think that Russell is another guy where if you want to kind of ride that Mercedes wave where they've won, what is it now, 3 of the last 4 races?
3 of the last 4. Pretty impressive.
If you want to ride that wave and you think that, hey, they're back in business, or even if you just think, you know what, Russell's a great value, I don't think he deserves to be at 22 million. I think it's easy to see in the next few races that he could go back up to, say, 26 million. I don't know that for certain, but I think that's well within the range of possibilities. So if you want to go with like a longer contract with him, I'm also all on board for that.
Yeah.
Assuming he's not locked out.
I mean, don't have to sell me because I already have my contract with him. But yeah, no, I mean at 22
Nice.
mil, it's you're solid value, solid. And I I will say we don't really truly know what's going to happen. If someone tells you, yeah, they know what's going to happen. I mean, like, listen, the narrative is McLaren. This is set up for them to win, but we've been saying that, and look what's happened. They've won once out of the past what 4 races, ended up being
Or
Mercedes, right? So, um, value,
they
man,
have had
you got
they
value.
have had the stronger car
Yeah,
between the two of them for the longest amount of time, and yet have fewer wins than Mercedes does.
yeah. No,
So
it's true, man.
yeah, like they haven't quite figured out the, oh shoot, we are, and I know this is just beating a dead horse with all this, but like, they haven't figured out we have a winning car right now. We should use that to our advantage
Yeah,
instead of acting, like underdogs. And I know everyone and their brother has said that same exact opinion, but uh, yeah, that's more on like the F1 side versus the fantasy side of it. But going on with my list, I'll mention a couple guys on say the lower side. Um, I like Hulkenberg. I know Haas has struggled in the last couple of races, but I almost feel like Spa was just kind of one of those races where they just didn't quite have it. Like they've not had enough flops, or at least flops in a row, that I'm scared off of them.
mm,
So I'm going to jump on that value, at least with Hulkenberg, until I essentially see a reason not to. Um, and then Sonoda, I like him as well because what was it? He qualified. I saw like he started 18th. I think that was because like Park Ferme. I think with other drivers. So like instead of starting 20th because of his grid penalty, he started 18th or something, and he
yeah.
worked his way up a couple of spots. So it wasn't a whole lot, but no one could pass. So it not really knocking him for not doing something that no other driver was doing, which was passing. So yeah, I do like Sonoda as well. After he saw his value fell, but yeah, Hulkenberg and Sonoda. Couple others. Alonso, take advantage of using him as a talent driver while you can. Um, Aston Martin may not get back to their early season form, but he's still Fernando Alonso and he can still do good things. And then I like Albon, but I always like Albon, so that's a slight bias on my part. But I do like his price at 11.
Yeah, I'm struggling on that midfield to figure out what's going to happen. So, um, I do like Albon. No technical reason other than he seems to like this track. I think a lot of the drivers really do, but he's shown performance here. I'm just curious. So for me, when I'm approaching a lot of these things, especially from a betting aspect, is I first want to know which car has an advantage, disadvantage before I think about the drivers. Because yes, the drivers will make a big difference. Um, so I just can't get a read sometimes on Williams and on how their performance is going to be. Typically in like low downforce, or I'm sorry, high downforce tracks. In the past, they've struggled, but it seems like this year it's been kind of mixed, and I just can't get that read on them. Though Albon he always seems to be pretty significant around here at Sanford. So hell, even last year, I think I remember seeing, can't remember if it was P3. He got like FP1, like top three. But track evolution really has a lot to play. So I will say, Haas is taking a different approach with their this year with and how they were approaching the car compared to last year. So when they've been typically just so good on like long straights and just terrible on like high downforce tracks, they've actually gotten themselves better in terms of finding that balance at high downforce tracks. So I yeah, 100%. I think if there's value on anyone, it's going to be Hulkenberg, especially just Hulkenberg, not Magnussen. Don't take Magnussen. Hulkenberg is just a much better driver than he is. But what about like Ricardo? Do you think that is just a little too much? 14 million?
That's where I'm leaning. I don't think like I mean currently I have him in the I guess the Apex League. I said our old league name or whatnot,
Well, we're
but
still
either
gonna
way is
call it
yeah,
F1 money.
I guess it is the
We'll
F1
still
MG.
call it F1 MG
So
League. I think. Okay, so we're gonna
so
that never died. It will never die. It always lives on.
I didn't know if it went through the rebrand
I
as
mean,
well, but
I
yeah,
I mean,
so that
it's just for to avoid
uh
confusion. I think people that will
yeah.
always live on, that will always be in our hearts, and it will always still be around for sure.
So so
Yeah.
the F1 so I have him right now in the F1 MG League, and I will be completely honest with you in that I don't remember if it's because Tsunoda was locked and that Ricardo happened to be cheaper when I signed him on. I think that's the case.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't think he's outperforming Tsunoda by what is the price difference? 1.7 million?
Think
Yeah.
so.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that he's outperforming
Let me
him
see.
enough to justify that cost. If I can choose one of them, I'm going to go with Tsunoda.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, until last race, it was Ricardo at 13.7 and Tsunoda would have been at 14.8. That's how much their value flipped. And largely thanks to not because Tsunoda had, say, a terrible performance, but more he had that whole grid penalty thing that set him back. Um, and that's kind of why his value dipped was just he finished lower than or relative to where he had usually finished, at least in the last 5 races. I can't remember exactly how that whole algorithm works there. That drops their value
Yeah.
or raises their value one way or the other. But yeah, essentially, I know it has something to do with like their recent performances. It might be like the last 8 races, but either way, no, I think you want to go Ricardo, I'm not going to fight you over it, but I think between the two of them, I'd favor Sonoda.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's track this then from the top to bottom. Grid rival salaries. Max 29 million. There seems to be value for the next 3 races on him. I mean, that's up to you if you want to do it. If you're one listener that's listening now and you've got to redo your whole lineup, I mean, and you want to just go for it, go for it. Um, but I honestly love the play you're calling out with Russell at 22.2 million. That's below Perez. And it's really he
Yeah.
just got dinged. This is your opportunity right now. He had a disqualification. They dinged him for 2 million right off the bat because of that. When you know his performance is going to be much better than his salary, you've got to jump on that. I think that is the biggest consensus we have on like the super values from the top guys. From the lower guys, I do agree, man. Albon at 11 million. I mean, he's in that range with Magnussen. So I already have him in my
Yeah,
lineup.
11-8. Yeah,
Yeah,
I messed up on that one, but yeah, 11-8. Either
11-8.
way, yeah,
Still,
I do
he's
like
in the
him. Yeah.
bottom 5. Like, what are we doing here? He can perform. He can be in the mix with the Alpines, and he can be in the mix with the Racing Bulls, especially this weekend. So if you're not sure, you just want to do maybe a, a one-time contract, you can if you want, and then figure out what you want to do for Monza, which is a completely different type of track. So consider that as well. You're going to go from high downforce all the way through to next week, which is going to be complete opposite. Everything is low downforce. Everything is just you got to have this. Got to eliminate drag as much as you can, and then yeah, I think. And then there's some that are just I don't know. Like, are we going to really take Stroll at 15.8? You could,
No.
but
Uh,
I mean,
uh,
he's
uh,
I can't say he hasn't been terrible. I mean,
yeah,
his
agree.
average has been 11th, but I mean, if you're trying to go for the last 9 races and you're trying to make a run, don't be taking guys like Stroll. You've got to swing for it. So, yeah, got to take those
Um,
swings. What about?
I know we need to move on.
Yep.
I was going to say, I know we need to move on to the fades, but and this might have been where you were going, but
Mhm.
I just wanted to quickly mention a couple team values.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Um,
let's talk about teams.
so off the bat, I love the pricing for Mercedes at 22.9. I think that is fantastic. If you
It's the
have
same
an
thing.
open spot for your constructor,
Yeah, Russell.
just lock it in.
Yeah, it's the
And
same reason.
then
Yeah.
um, I like Haas at 13. It's not say a sexy pick, but it's just kind of it's there if you need a cheaper constructor. Um, if you really need to go cheap, Williams is fine, but it's not what I would like to do. I don't mind going with a cheaper, excuse me, cheaper constructor, but I prefer one that has maybe a little bit more upside because Hulkenberg and well, Haas in general have had just a faster car overall than Williams have. I mean, you can see the point discrepancy, but at the same time, like real life points discrepancy. But you can also see, like in fantasy, like you've got Hulkenberg and then Magnussen, who is better than Logan Sargent, also bringing up points for Haas as well.
Hmm.
So, like, yeah, if you need to really go dumpster diving, I'm okay with Williams, but it's not my preferred play. But yeah, if I'm looking for value, Mercedes is just a smash
It's
option. It is
gotta.
fantastic.
You've got to take it.
Um,
Sign him
if
for
there's
five
any way
races.
possible,
Sign him for
exactly.
5 races. Don't even ask questions. Just do it.
But that's yeah. If you can do it, then
Didn't do it.
just please do it. And make the driver work out because you will get contracts that expire, and then you will free up money to then sign, say, a better driver or like some midfieldish, maybe higher midfield guys. Um, but yeah, just sign Mercedes.
Yeah.
Just do
Just
just
do it.
do it.
Don't even think about doing anything. But you gotta sign up. Yeah, the value they're giving you is just incredible. I'd be surprised if I mean I can't say I would be totally surprised, but I'd be surprised, yeah, if there was another DNF and something happens. Like that's the risk. But I mean again, any that's the risk in any driver anyways. So okay, well let's go into the fades. And let's go with drivers first. And I didn't really say I was fading Stroll, but who are you avoiding? You're making your lineup. You have one driver. Let's start in the back markers first. Who's the driver that you're
All
fading?
right. Uh, that's a tough one. Like if we're looking very bottom, there's really no one that I really will fade other than say Magnussen, like Bottas, Sargent, Joe. They're all cheap enough that like if you need to, um, there's a DFS term, and I know it's used elsewhere, but like if you need a free square, quote unquote, then playing someone like a Joe or a Sargent is fine. As long as they don't DNF, they're going to get you roughly 80 points with upside for more. We've seen that from Joe. Um, he's not been there recently, but we have seen it. Uh, so if you need the free square, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I would rather go for either a free square of one of those guys, Bottas maybe, but I would rather go for those guys that are lower or go up to, say, an Albon and Sonoda than play a Kevin Magnussen. Either save your money and then with a Sargent, for example, and then go for another higher tier driver if you have, say, two spots open, or go for, say, a Alonso Albon or Alonso Sonoda, something to that effect. Don't quite go for a like I don't see the up as much upside with say going with a Magnussen Alonso, or it's just not as comfortable for me just because I would much rather prefer say Hulkenberg. Um, and I don't like playing two drivers from the same team if I can help it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm the one guy that
and then
has.
Alpine, I
Oh, you're
can't.
fading him.
They broke me.
Mm.
They broke me. I'm like, I know you had Alcon did okay, but in Spa there were some teams that had good races, such as Alpine, that just haven't had good races recently, and then there were teams that have been decent recently, like Haas, that just weren't good in Spa.
But that
I
goes
mean,
back
you
to what I
saw that.
said. Again, like
Yeah, it's just
Haas has changed their way of how they used to be good on those long straights, but it's not about the straights anymore for them. They're focused a lot of their attention on how do we maximize opportunities in the low and the mid speed corners. So that's why they've changed that. So
and yeah, like if Alpine if they put together a decent weekend, or even like if they're showing some promise on Friday and then leading up to qualifying, then I may change my tune a little bit, and I'll be posting on Discord whether I do or not.
mm,
Um, Taking a shot with them in say DFS contest versus the fantasy aspect of it.
mm-hmm.
Pretty much everyone is in play on in DFS because that's a completely different game. You're not really worried about gaining and losing value. You're just playing for points. But going back to like the fantasy side, yeah, they burned me so heavily, and I'm a little leery of their inconsistency that I'm just not quite sure if I'm comfortable playing them just yet, especially if you are trying to gain value, get points, make up spots. Yeah, you have to go big or go home, but they really haven't shown a whole lot of go big upside. I mean, let me look at
Well, I have
trying to get
breaking news for you
all right.
because on the betting side, I actually in lights out bet at F1 and I were kind of briefly talking about it in Discord and whatnot because I had been eyeing Pierre Gasly just loves this track. He just loves it. Even back to his days when he was with Racing Bulls, whatever AlphaTauri when he was called that.
AlphaTauri.
Yeah, and I couldn't help myself because I was like, man, I was just looking at the way he was driving, and I'm a big Gasly hater too. I typically don't care to bet him, and I was backing him, man. I really was because last year he was pretty decent. I mean, obviously he finished third, but I'm trying to think of before the chaos ensued throughout every session. I mean, he was within 12th spot or higher until Q3 where he was knocked out in Q2. But he like just taking it down the line, 12th and from between FP1 and in the race finish, he was 12th, 6th, 11th, 8th, 12th, was knocked out in Q3, and then finished on podium third. 2021, he was top 10 in every session, ended up fourth place at the end of the race. And he even qualified third. 2022 was a little rough for sure, but he's been vocal. He loves this place. So if there's probably value, it could be on Gasly for the Alpine.
Okay. Well,
I'm not. I'm just. I
you've
mean,
swayed me
anything
on.
can happen.
I mean, that helps. That does
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
Sway my opinion. Though that's why we do this here.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Like
uh,
I'm never typically
so
one to back Gasly too, and I was like, you know what, we got to go with this. And they have a car where it drag doesn't matter here. They have a draggy car, so it does, but it doesn't. Right? It's going to matter in the straights, but most of the if you're going to have the highest downforce, you're already creating your own drag. So it's not drag isn't as sufficient like going to be a concern as like a Monza, for instance. So it's very possible they could be very frisky, but you are right. You don't know what you're going to get out of them. Like I expected they were going to be a little bit worse at Spa, and they ended up being okay, right? So
yeah.
you just don't know.
Um, Going on to heck, I'm just going to go straight up to the higher end guys. Um, some fades I have,
Hmm.
and again, this is purely fantasy related, is Piastri and Hamilton. I know I'm loving George and Mercedes as a constructor,
Hmm.
um, but I think that Hamilton being up at 28.8, um, had it not been for the disqualification, like I don't think that he would be quite up where he is. I mean, he would still be a very highly priced driver, but I don't think he would be quite at 28.8.
Yeah.
Um, Even though I think Mercedes is doing extremely well, I don't know if they're doing well enough to be Hamilton at P2 in the pricing.
Hmm.
Um, I think that you might see that flip with say no or no, he's P no, he is P2. Okay, yeah, and Piastri is right below him. I think that you're probably going to see some more Norris, if well, assuming he can figure out, his race starts. Um, I don't know. It's more vibes based than anything. But I just feel like there's just been so much history, even with Red Bull. And please have a counter for this. I would love to. I would love to hear one. But like, uh, even though Red Bull have been struggling, like I just know what I'm getting in Max. And maybe I should know what I'm getting with Hamilton and with Piastri, and I do think that they are fantastic drivers and fantastic cars, but I don't know relative to their price if that is necessarily a wise decision if you're looking to build a little bit of value. I think they might be close to their peak as far as their value goes. And that's kind of my main thing here. It's not that I don't think they can't score points, but I think they are towards their ceilings in terms of actual like monetary or in-game value.
For Red Bull, um, yes, I don't want them. That yes, that's 100%. I do not trust when okay it's they've been on the incline for how long for so long, and we're in a part of the season where development has caught up to them, and some of it is just them not maximizing the opportunity anymore. Going back to your ceiling comment, even some of it just they've declined. It happens. People are like thinking, "Oh my God, the world is ending for them." But I mean, look at Ferrari. They messed up, and look what's happened. Racing Bulls, they messed up on their development. Look what's happened, right? Like it's normal for these teams to do it, and that's what's happening right now for Red Bull. While Mercedes just this is what they do. This is their MO. And this is why I always trust Mercedes. And I know I'm kind of biased to Mercedes, but when it comes to strategy, when it comes to development, they are on their A game. They mess something up, they figure it out, and they get better at it. We've seen that time and time with them. That's just what they do. They make a mistake, it happens. They made a mistake in their 2022 car. So right now, I just do not trust Red Bull other than Max Verstappen and
Yep.
race day strategy with Max Verstappen. I can't even, I will, I just, I'm done with Perez. I won't even, I'm betting against him even before I've seen anything. And I'm betting against him with Leclerc out of all people, which I'm a big hater of. And that just shows you how much I am bearish on Red Bull just overall. And it's not just so much Perez, it's the car too. I just don't trust them. I don't. So yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
take what's on the incline versus what's on the decline, and until they show you something, then you take it on. So yeah,
Yeah, and I'm with you there. Like I mean I've listed off Max, but yeah, I'm not really
but Max
a fan of
is the
putting
guy that you will never ignore. I will take
yeah,
him all
you
day.
can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Um yeah, it's just he's so incredibly good that you can't take him off your board.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I will put Max in there, but like yeah, I'm not really doing much with, if anything, with Perez or Red Bull as a constructor. Yeah, they're just really not. And yeah, and that's why I feel like I'm kind of doing the opposite with, say, Hamilton,
Hmm.
but that may just be a misjudgment on my part, and I may need to adjust. I'll fully admit that, like, where these takes are not, say, doubting, like I mean, earlier I was, I'm hyping up Mercedes like, hey, I think they're really good now.
Yeah.
It's more of a, I don't know how much more his value can go up if you're looking for value. If you're looking straight up for points and you don't care if his value fluctuates a little bit, potentially goes slightly down if Norris happens to, say, take a win. Um, if
I
who
mean,
knows?
I
Who
think
knows at
the
this point? But like, but but yeah, if you're just wanting for points, then that's fine. But I'm more like with fades and such. Usually, I'm not necessarily concerned with points as I am like, I think that this driver is still capable of scoring, but is towards their peak in contract value. And
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of where the whole value and fade kind of has a little bit of a gray area
yeah.
built into it. And yeah, I'm not trying to be super vague here, but yeah, that's kind of like my whole thought process is like
No,
points are fine, but if you are looking to build a little bit of value potentially, he might be towards his ceiling. It might go up, but
yeah,
you
it's
just
true, and that's
just
the
don't
way
know.
it's the way it should be, and that's the way as like when we do betting, that's the way we look at the odds too, right? The odds are reflected almost similarly as the salaries and in many aspects. And when the odds are kind of capping, like right now, an example is, Mercedes, their odds are just nerfed for free practices, even let's just say free practice for the sake of this exercise. I mean, they've been shaved in half since, the past three races. So now I'm like, I can't take, a Russell top three anymore in free practice because, or Hamilton. It used to be 7-1, 6-1 I could get even in some places. Now I'm lucky to even just see a 2-1, 3-1. And at that point, I'm not taking that opportunity. I've maximized it. Where I got to go look for the value at somewhere else, and that's just it's how it works with even on the betting side. But yeah, no, it's sound advice. Well, let's get let's get wrapping up here. So we've talked about fades. We've talked about values. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of give out? Um, Anything at all?
Um, I think the main thing, yeah, if you are looking for, say, some quick DFS pointers, I can just quick, rapid fire some things. Uh, Again, you're playing for points. I harp on this probably every episode that I've been on. You're playing for points. Don't worry about value. As far as like whether you'll gain or lose it, it's just a weekly game. But you will need to wisely construct your roster um, to where, especially if you're playing in like a tournament style or in Grid Rival, it's called a sprint. Um, you're trying to find lower rostered drivers that will set your team apart. So if you think that, say, um, Piastri qualifies really well, and you're like, oh, maybe he'll be, a great pick. Well, he might be, but you also have to factor in, well, how many people do I think will also play this guy? And you just kind of have to factor that in. So like if you do play someone who you think might be a little bit popular, just try to get different elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Ferrari's kind of in a no man's land this week with both fantasy and DFS. I'm not exactly sure where I stand on them. I think they're appropriately priced, but I don't really know what to do with them. I don't feel like they have an amazing amount of upside. And again, after summer break, they might have made some adjustments, and they could be pretty awesome coming out of the gates. I just don't know just yet. But they feel in a bit of a no man's land. Um, if you're playing in a head-to-head, I have a feeling that your opponent's probably going to be playing Russell, and I think that's a good play. If you're playing head-to-heads in that kind of format where it's 1v2 or in the 50-50s, rostership doesn't matter quite as much because you're just trying to beat half the field versus 10 plus people. So I do like Russell in DFS as well, because I think he gives you some upside as well as some value because of just his pricing is so good. Um, Going a little bit further down, Alonso, Hulkenberg, Sonoda, I like them as a talent driver. And then, yeah, DFS especially, I'm all for the strategy of stars and scrubs, where like if I have to play a basement driver of Sargent or Joe, I'll do it as long as it means that I am moving up. Like if the difference is I'm moving from a Sonoda to a Hulkenberg by using one of those guys, that really doesn't do it for me. Like I'll just kind of pick whoever. I won't go down to Sargent just so that I can go up from Sonoda to Hulkenberg. But like I will do it if it means that I'm going from Alonso to Russell, kind of thing. Like if that kind of savings helps. Um, Not a slight against Alonso, but yeah, but just saying. Or a Perez to Norris or Leclerc or whatnot. Um, yeah, make sure your lineup is different. And yeah, sorry, I'll quickly list off some of the drivers that I like this week for DFS purposes. Max always up there. Hamilton, Piastri, again, different than fantasy. This is DFS only. I like those guys. I actually like all the top four.
Yeah.
Um, for DFS, Russell, Alonso, Hulkenberg, and Sonoda. So Alonso, Hulk, and Sonoda are my favorite talent driver picks. If you need to go further down, potentially Gasly, just given some of the info that you've got. If Gasly's looking good, people might be scared off of him because of just the recent run that he's had where it's just not been great. So he might actually be a good contrarian pick to set your lineup apart.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he's not a talent driver, just kind of throwing him in there will probably set your lineup apart. And then, yeah, going down to Sargent and Joe, they're essentially free squares where they could open up a good bit of money to set your lineup apart elsewhere and get up to some higher end drivers, or even some higher end teams. I'm probably playing Mercedes in most of my DFS lineups this week. But I'm okay at the moment with McLaren, but they are more expensive, and I think that Mercedes is going to put up around the same amount of points. So I won't really go up, and I won't pay up for the similar ceiling.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thought process and my general thoughts on DFS this week.
Well, this is solid, man. I mean, this is why this is why you're third. I know you're not first, but you are in the top 3 with what? Like we have I don't know how many people we have in our league. But a lot. We have quite a bit. And you constantly are handing out winners. But yeah,
209.
209. God, I really thought we had more. Or maybe that's I'm thinking of our some of our Discord channel users. Okay. Well, anyways, this was awesome. I'm excited. We have 9 races left, and this is it. This is the stretch. This is the time to make some moves. So feel free to get into the Discord, ask us questions, and yeah, just now we're Apex Insiders, and it's gonna be fun. And if you haven't downloaded the app, there's gonna be a link that you can download the app. So yeah, I'm super pumped about the race this weekend. Early morning tomorrow. So, but yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time, man. This is fun.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to do it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Alrighty. We'll see y'all later.